Good morning, Park Drive Church. It is April 5th, hopefully when you're watching this, and we want to welcome you. I've got Pastor Stacey with me and Doc Marj with us this morning as well, checking in. So why don't you guys say hello?
Morning.
Good morning, church.
It's good to be together, and we're glad that you've tuned in, whether by the church website or by Facebook or, of course, by DVD. It's great to see that you guys are checking in. And so a couple things we want to cover this morning. We'll get some announcements out of the way, and then we got a few things we want to share with you as we get going. So just Easter is coming, and of course it's Palm Sunday this week, so we want to recognize that, and there'll be more about that coming up in the message. But with Easter coming next week, we had planned to have a Good Friday joint service with other churches in the Oliver area. Of course, that's not happening because we can't be at the church. But we still want to encourage you to join us at 10 a.m. on Friday morning for Good Friday. There will be a service as planned, and we're hoping also to enjoy communion together, the Lord's table. And so please remember that in your shopping, right, Pastor Stacey?
That's right. Yeah, so you're going to want to get yourself your wine or your grape juice, and you want to make sure that you have your crackers or your bread available for yourself.
Yeah, no running to the store on Friday morning. So we will be having a service Good Friday, and then also on Sunday, Easter morning, there will also be the 10 o'clock service as usual, and so we just encourage you to check in with that. So a few announcements to bring you up to speed along with that. In just a few moments, we're going to talk with Marj about counseling and your mental health in this time. So that's something we want to let you know about. Also, we have the church services on DVD. So if you are not able to get this by internet through Facebook or the church webpage or YouTube, we do have DVDs, and we are dropping them off carefully for those who can't get out, and also providing them at the church office if you want to pick them up. Also at the church office, daily bread is available, and the new church directory, which is a great way of staying in touch in these times. We got the phone numbers, email addresses, and names of our whole church family. And we do appreciate you answering calls as our lead team calls around and some of our staff call around. We just want to stay connected and encourage you as much as you can to check in on each other and check back with us so that we know if anyone has a need at this time. We want to be ready to respond any way that we can. So that brings up a few things in mind. We know that with all that's going on in our world, people away from work, staying at home for prolonged periods, quarantining, lots has happened. Even we've heard about health workers reusing masks, which is a pretty strange idea. But it makes us realize that we ought not to take certain things for granted. One of the things that I appreciated this week while I was out shopping and doing my business was I'm noticing that there are security guards posted in stores, in different government offices and places that you go, and just hired security standing there. And I think to myself when I walk in, like, I wonder what we'll need you for. But it doesn't take very long as you wait in the grocery store lineup when you start to hear the stories of people becoming impatient, some people throwing their groceries on the floor because they're tired of waiting or being instructed on what cashier they're allowed to go see. And it's an odd thing to realize we need peacemakers now more than ever. And it just makes me feel as a Christian, this is a great opportunity for us to shine. Or if you don't have those qualities, maybe to hide. Have you noticed that?
It is a different time that we are living in, a different world, and it changes every day.
Yeah, confusing.
Yeah, no, for the first time I was actually told not to bring my bags into the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the gentleman was the security guard, he was very, very kind, and he let me leave them at the door and do my shopping, then come back and get them. But yeah, it's confusing. It's a little bit strange, and you know, you can't just walk into the store like you normally did.
Mhm. And it wasn't all that long ago that we were being encouraged to bring our own bags.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were not to use plastics.
Yeah.
And now things have.
It's a lot of changing. It's a lot of adapting, and there's a lot of things going on. So, you know, along with that, you know, Jesus in his day was always encouraging his disciples to be peacemakers, and we know, like, we've heard that message before, but nowadays there is really such a simple way that you and I can bring peace and encouragement into our world. You see it right now with health workers, you know, being celebrated with the, you know, parade of emergency services, sirens, and singing. One of the videos I enjoyed this week was doctors singing the worship song "Waymaker" from the top of a hospital.
Yeah.
You know, that was just great, and of course I could get in and sing along. But my heart has really been turned towards the everyday essential service workers, if you want to call them that. Most of them don't think of themselves that way, but you know, just like the cashier in the grocery store who is coming to work, now they've got like plastic shields up, right?
Yeah.
You know, to protect them and that kind of thing. They face the same hazards because the grocery store is one of the most dangerous places you can be right now. But then they're also having to put up with the impatience and just poor behavior of citizens who've kind of had it up to here. And so here we are as Christians in the middle of that. What can we do to celebrate peace, but also to bring a little peace and harmony? And so one of the things I've been doing is I try to say to, you know, especially every drive-through worker that I go through and see, thank you for working. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I know that you don't have to be, that it's a choice to come into work. I don't know. How about you? In what ways do you think we can be peacemakers today?
Well, I think certainly in adding to that, just to really being pleasant to all of those that serve us.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the frustrations of people in the lineups. Well, for that not to be us. For us to be the pleasant ones that have a smile on our face, and certainly to say thank you, to just show how much we appreciate what they're doing, because they in fact are putting their lives in danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't think about the seriousness of that. But that's what they're doing every day when they come to work, because any of us could be carrying the virus,
Well, we'd never know.
and we wouldn't know.
Well, I think even we talked about too earlier this week that when moments like this arise, and they don't come that often, you know, if those of us are kind of frustrated with everyday things and how they're going already, then when a crisis comes, you know, people are looking for a moment for a soapbox. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Suddenly, like, all their good ideas are the right ideas. And so one example might be that people put rubber gloves on, or vinyl or whatever gloves on, to show that they want to protect themselves and to protect others. Then you have somebody else who steps up and says, I don't think that makes a difference. You know, it's probably spreading the virus more. And I guess what I'm getting at by the soapbox is one person has the intent to show a good attitude towards what's going on. Another person has the intent to point out the best practice. Maybe, like I said, a soapbox. And it makes for a stressful situation because everybody's trying to get along, you know?
I think one of the things that enters into that is the fact that so little is known. That every day they're learning more about this enemy that we're facing. And so we're getting confusing messages.
Yeah.
Because someone thinks something, someone else thinks something else, and it's all just their best guesstimates.
Yeah.
because no one knows for sure. This is an enemy we haven't faced before.
Yeah, we talked about fear last week,
Mhm.
in the first week. And, with fear, how does the Christian face fear? Because we know when it comes to the Bible and what the Bible teaches about the end days, if anything, Christians right now need to strengthen themselves, like we talked about last night, with grace, knowing that if this is the end day, if these are the last days, then 1 Thessalonians 5 says we belong to this day. This is not a day when the church is out of place. This is actually a day when the church takes center stage. And we don't need to be afraid of it because the scripture says in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 9 that God has not destined us for the wrath that is to come, but rather to obtain salvation. We're in a totally different place than other people. But if we don't feel that way, and then of course sometimes we're not acting that way one with another. So that's kind of a spiritual foundation. And in Ephesians 2:6 actually says that we have already been seated together with Christ in heavenly places, which means like you're not on the wrong end of the spectrum here in the middle of this crisis. Actually, Christians are called and placed to be some of the most consistent and staple people that are in our society right now, because we are not afraid of the larger outcome. We believe that God is in control and that God has called us to be a part of these times in this moment. So it really kind of rests a little bit on mental health. And that's why we've asked you to jump in today, Marj. What are some of your reflections?
Well, actually, just tying in with what you have already said, and to remind us that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear.
That's right.
We know that God is still in control. He is on the throne. And regardless of what we go through, He is there with us. And so as Christians, we need to encourage other people. And this indeed, if we are living in the end times, this is indeed the time for us as Christians to take a step forward, a step in faith, to share the good news with the rest of the world. But in speaking of mental health, just to share with you a few of the thoughts that I have had as I've listened to the news and listened to what is going around the world. One of the terms that is used extensively is social distancing. We are called to separate ourselves, to stay apart from others. But social distancing is not a correct term, and we hear it every day on the news. Really, what is being referred to is physical distancing, not social distancing. We are social people, and we need to socialize. That doesn't mean that we get together in groups or that even we gather as the church. Here we're gathering as the church in a different way now. So we look for different ways to do things. We look for different ways to socialize. And how we do that can be simply picking up the phone. Phone a friend. If someone comes to your mind, perhaps God wants you to talk to them today, to encourage them. But when we look at mental health, and we all want to maintain mental health, and especially at this critical time. And mental health, and I know that I've been stressing for some time that we need to move away from the concept of mental illness to mental health, meaning that we look after ourselves.
That's right.
We are body, soul, and spirit. And we need to look after our spirits.
Yeah.
And so as we face this difficult and challenging time, you may be feeling fear. You might be experiencing that. You might be feeling isolated. You might be feeling abandoned, even. There are all kinds of feelings that come to us, and I don't know about some of you, but I'm going to share this with you. I'm claustrophobic. I don't like to be locked in to a place. And yes, we're to stay at home.
We picked that up, Marj.
Yeah. So what do you do to help yourself through these times? Well, again, you pick up the phone, but you do the other things that perhaps you have something that you have been saying, oh, I'll do that when I get around to it, when I have some time.
Yeah.
I'll clean out my library. I'll clean out the closet. I have stuff I want to go through, to get rid of, to give away, because in my closet I probably have things that I haven't worn for the last year or 2 years. And if I haven't worn them in that long, except when I was away in Africa, but if I haven't worn them in that long, then perhaps it's time to share them, to give them away to someone. So I can go through my closets. I can do those things that I never had time to do. And now I've got the time.
Yeah.
So do it. Perhaps you have hobbies, things that you really like to do. Well, now's the time to do those things. Maybe you're a reader. And one of the most important things for me in this time is, do we really read our Bibles as much as we need to?
Nice.
Do we spend the time with God that we need to spend with Him? Maybe we haven't. As we've been busy working and doing all of the other things that we're doing in our regular, busy lives, do we truly take that time for God? I walk twice a day now, and that's my time with God. That's my prayer time. I even sing in those times, and for any of you who know me, you know I don't sing.
That's
But-
why you're alone, Marj.
But hey, yeah, God gave me this voice, and so He can listen to it. And so when I'm out walking,
That's good.
I can sing.
Yeah.
Because I can make a joyful noise unto the Lord.
That's right. Yeah, from your
So,
heart.
what is it for you that you need to do at this time in order to look after yourselves? When we look after other people, it really lifts our spirits.
Yes, it does.
And so, one of the things that used to be the way to contact people was to write letters or to send them cards, to let them know we're thinking about them.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because that's something, Stacey, that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I was talking with Pastor Bart earlier about how when I struggled a lot with mental health issues, one of the things that I noticed is when I was at my very, very lowest, I would get these phone calls from individuals who were feeling low too. And I found that as I was encouraging them, I was like being filled myself, which seems so very counterintuitive, but it actually really works. And I just thinking, as Pastor Bart has been reading from 1 Thessalonians 5, in verse 11 it says, therefore encourage one another and build one another up, just as you have been doing, like to continue to do it.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like you're at the very lowest of the low of yourself and you have nothing left to give, you'd be amazed at how when you take that step of faith to kind of start pouring yourself out a little bit, how God just like supernaturally fills you and you have substance where you had nothing before. So, yeah.
Well, and to reinforce that, it truly is in giving
Yes.
that we
Yeah, it is.
receive.
Absolutely.
We had a friend say to us just a week ago, I feel like I've lost a sense of purpose. And it had to go along with that line of being able to contribute or give. And I just think, like, speaking about the social and emotional foundation that we're trying to upkeep here, it is to understand that now is a great time for us to be fulfilling the purposes that God has in our lives. I think that's really what you're saying when you're talking about pouring into others and finding fulfillment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I know, like, one of the things that happens quite often when you're isolated, you become depressed. Sometimes you can be anxious and discouraged, and what you're waiting for is for something to come in to fix you. And sometimes the last thing we think about is that we can be used in that state, but we actually can be, and it's actually really, really healthy. And we don't have to wait to be encouraged. We can take the first steps, and I think that that's important to remember. We don't have to wait for somebody to call us. We can be the person that instigates.
I find actually often bad theology or poor spiritual thought is usually the result of poor thinking and poor social behaviors. And this is what I mean. If someone leaves themselves long enough in that place of isolation, thoughts to themselves, the next thing you know, they've got conspiracies whirling. I know I've heard some this week already about different things that are happening. And it just reminds me that in isolation, really need to be reaching out
Yeah, we do.
safely, of course,
Mhm.
safely, but making an effort to reach out, because as we serve one another and serve God in purpose,
Yeah.
there's fuel in it.
And in that reaching out, I would just like to say to all of Park Drive Church, and I've mentioned this to Pastor Bart already, but for the month of April, and for those of you who know me, you know that I am a counselor, and I am offering my counseling services free of charge for the month of April, and then we'll see where things go from there. So if any of you are struggling and feeling really discouraged and frustrated and all of those feelings that we've talked about, feel free to contact me and we'll set up an appointment. And we can arrange that either over the phone lines or on Skype or Zoom, or there's a number of different platforms that
We could
are
use
available to us that we could use. And let's just go from there and see where that takes you. So that's a service that you can certainly avail yourselves of
Well, you know,
over the next
Stacey,
month.
Marj is usually at 110%.
Yes.
So we could overcharge her to, maybe 150, just by giving her a call and checking in. Anyway, other things to let you know before we move on. Church finances, we're doing quite well. Jane tells me from the bookkeeping department that you really are doing your part. We'll have more to say about that next week. For the month of March, we came within about $2,000 of budget, which is, I believe it's $14,500 per month. So, good job.
Hey,
Way to send that in. Praise the Lord. We appreciate it. And because of that, we're not on EI right now.
That's right. Yeah.
So on behalf of Pastor Stacey and our counselor Marj and myself, we just want to encourage you this morning and encourage you to pass it out all the same. God bless you.